Hello from the Heartland. My name is Jenna, and this is Smarter News. News when it matters and why it matters. Our Smarter series features unique people who help us think and live smarter. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Smarter News. My name is Jenna, and we have a unique perspective for you today after the attempted assassination of former President Trump this weekend. I was able to connect with an eyewitness of this event, Gary Tate. Gary is a father of two girls. He decided to attend this rally as a supporter of President Trump. He did so with his fiance and his fiance's mother. And he provides a really interesting window into what is now a historic moment in American history. You'll hear from Gary his reasons for attending this rally. It's the first rally he's ever attended for former President Trump. And you'll hear some of his thoughts just as he was entering the event, as he watched this event unfold, and of course, his reflections in the aftermath. In reporting on a story like this, it is really important to get eyewitness perspective. And we know from our reporting in general that eyewitness perspective is going to change depending on who you speak to. But it's still a piece of a puzzle as this investigation is still very much ongoing. And we still have more questions than answers. So without further ado, let's start with Gary, who, as we started this conversation, was describing why he made the choice to go to this rally and what it was like when he arrived. So just take me back to Saturday and talk me through, why did you decide to attend the rally and what was it like getting there and getting into the event?
Well, I am a supporter of President Trump. I think that during his presidency, he did a lot of great things, and I had never been in the same proximity as a former president or current president. So I was really excited about going. I went with my fiance, Stephanie, and her mother. Her mom is in her mid to late 70s. Who was also very excited about the event. So it was just a normal day. You know, we left our house at about I want to say about 1:00 and arrived there with traffic. I think we got there right around 2:15, 2:30. Had a bit of a walk to get to the line. The line was extremely long, and I'm guessing it took us probably about an hour and a half to get through the line. They did give everyone bottled water, which was wonderful. It was warm bottled water, but it was water, it was wet. As I mentioned, they, as we're going through the line, I found it a little bit odd that there were no trash cans anywhere, but people were still being respectful and trying to pile it up the best they could rather than just discarding it. Everyone around us seemed equally excited. We talked to a lot of people throughout the line. It was quite an experience. I had never been to an event with that many people outdoors, outside of a concert or something like that. But it took us a while to get through the line. When we got up to the tent, they had security. You had to go through metal detectors, and you weren't allowed any purses or anything. So we had all of our stuff in a Ziploc bag, clear bag, so that everything could be seen. But all we had with us were wallets, cell phones. So we really didn't have much for them to look through. Yeah. But,
how would you describe the security as you were in line and going through metal detectors to get in? What did you notice about the number of security, medical personnel, just the overall organization of the event?
I tell you that things were running very smoothly. That being said, though, I didn't see any security. Maybe at the beginning of the line where the water was being held out, there was a little bit of security. I think it was more so just to make sure that people weren't going through the VP line versus they had two separate lines. One line got you straight in, and I assume it took you straight up to the security. which didn't appear to be any line at all. So there probably wasn't many people that had that the wristband needed to get through there. But I really didn't see any security at all, in the line. And as far as medical personnel, there was a woman that had fainted, I assume due to the heat, and people were just yelling "medic, medic," and kind of passing it down the line. And several people exited the line and came up to assist. But I don't know, I'm going to estimate that it took about 10 minutes before medical personnel arrived to give her the help that she needed. So there wasn't, from what I could see, there wasn't much medical personnel there, at least not in the proximity of where we were at.
And so you go into the event, you going in through the metal detectors and you get inside. Can you just describe to us what it looked like once you got to the inner part of where the event was being held?
They were white tents set up, and they had medical detectors or metal detectors, and I'm going to guess there may have been 6 different lines that you could go through the metal detectors. And they had a gentleman standing there, giving you instructions as far as what you couldn't take through. And there was an officer standing on the other side of the metal detectors, just kind of observing and making sure that, I guess no one left things behind. But, we didn't have much with us, so there wasn't much to look through. So I can't speak on, how thorough they were being, as far as looking through people's bags and stuff, because we really didn't have a whole lot with us. But yeah,
and so once you're inside, is there assigned seating, or how do these events work? I've never been inside a rally like this for President Trump, and it was your first time. So what did you notice when you went into this venue?
Well, there really wasn't any direction at all. There was it just kind of, things opened up. There was a large field that had a couple of food vendor trucks, a couple of tents that had water. They were handing out bottled water, and we really didn't know, where to go, what to do. So, as I mentioned, we had my fiance's mother with us, so we let her sit down in the shade under a tent while we scoped things out and figured out, where we were going to end up. So we walked down to, it was a gated area where they had seating and standing area, but I think most of it was seating. The people that were standing there were kind of blocking the aisleways, trying to probably find someplace to sit. So it was quite a process to actually get up to the front, but we were able to do so, and we found a single seat that was sitting there. So I said, okay, you go head back and get your mom, and she wanted to get some food. So I said, I'll sit down in this seat and wait for you to get back. And in the meantime, I saw a couple of other empty seats elsewhere, and they were just folding chairs. So I kindly just asked the people that were sitting next to them, is anyone sitting in that seat? They said no, folded it up, handed it to me, and we were sitting in the aisle, so I was able to just set those chairs up without obstructing the walkway. So I waited for her to get back, and it took her quite a time to get back. I'm guessing she was gone for about an hour, and she came back and she had the food, but she didn't have her mom. She couldn't manage both, so she left her mom under a tent, and once she got back, she stayed there while I went and, grabbed her mom and helped her through the crowd. Yeah.
And how close were you to the stage, Gary? Like, once you're in your seat, how close were you to the podium that we all saw on television where President Trump was standing?
We were 5 rows back. Five rows back, but there was probably, I guess, 15 to 20 feet from the barricade to the stage. So I don't know, I'm guessing maybe 60 feet from the stage. So we were pretty close. We had a unobstructed view to the president, and we were super excited to have, landed those seats so close. I know there were people there people arrived at 8 a.m. So for us to get there, at 2:30 and be, end up so close was a surprise.
And probably felt good because, as you mentioned, it's a big crowd. It was crowded, kind of tight. It was hot, and it's late in the afternoon in Pennsylvania. And I can attest to that. Having lived on the East Coast in the summer, it's it's hot.
Yes.
It's a real heat that you're navigating. So President Trump finally comes onto the stage around 6 o'clock. Tell me what that moment was like and what was going through your head then. What did you notice too about his setup on the stage as he was coming to the podium?
Well, I had mentioned to my fiance earlier, before he had come out, that I was really surprised that they didn't have any bulletproof glass or protection for him. I thought that was kind of standard, but again, I had never been to a rally, so what do I know? Um, but when he came out, I mean, there was a lot of excitement. He was about an hour after we were expecting him, so when he finally did come out, the place did get. It was loud, a lot of cheering, a lot of USA chants, and yeah, it was like nothing I've ever experienced. There was a really good energy.
We know that he started to speak just after 6 o'clock, and we've obviously seen some footage of this at this point. Just to kind of catch everybody up, you have President Trump. He's starting to speak about the border, and he did something very unusual that we haven't seen in previous rallies, which is he had props, he had screens, he was showing people graphics. I'm assuming from what we
Yes.
saw of the border and different statistics. So
Hmm.
he's talking about this. Uh, and really his address is beginning in earnest, right? Because he stopped thanking everyone and talking about the media and doing kind of his normal introductions. He's actually now starting about something that's important to his platform. What happens? What do you hear that now we understood was a bullet? What was that moment like for you?
Um, at the time, we didn't know what the noise was. We didn't know if it was someone goofing off that had fireworks, firecrackers. He had just he was just in the process of welcoming Dave McCormick to the stage, and right in that moment is when you heard everything go off. And it sounded to me, from my recollection, 5 or 6 shots. But again, we didn't know what that was, and it's a bit of a blur. But when things registered, we everybody hit the ground. I grabbed my fiance and her mother, and we all got down on the ground and we covered our heads. Stayed down for, I don't know, a few minutes, and people started to stand back up. So I got, I didn't get all the way up, but I got up onto my knees and looked around, and you could see a little bit of chaos going on to our right, in the bleachers, towards the top of the bleachers. And again, we didn't know what had happened. So we didn't know if it was somebody that was involved with the shooting or firecrackers, whatever it was. I looked to my left and I saw the Secret Service personnel taking President Trump off of the stage. And yeah, it was a frightening, very frightening moment. It's, I had never been to an event like this before. And, it just seemed surreal. There were people crying, not knowing what was going on. There were people very concerned about the safety of President Trump. Is he okay? We all went there for a reason, and it's because we love the man, and we feel like he gives us hope. And to think that that could have been taken away so quickly, it was again, it was just surreal. I don't know how else to say it. I can't. It was almost like a dream. I think there's moments that I lost. That I can't even tell you exactly the time frame, but it all happened within minutes. And it wasn't until we were all walking out. Everyone had different recollections of what happened. There were people that said they saw this, and it wasn't until I got home that I really knew that he was okay. Um, but
We have obviously seen the video and the still images that were taken in the moments that followed. And I'm sure you've
right,
seen some of them too. Being so close to where the president was, did you see him duck down, come up? I know you were also down on the ground. Did
I
you
did see him
notice
reach
him
for
when
his
he
ear. I did see him reach for his ear, and I saw them come in and push him down. And when he got up, honestly, not knowing whether it was gunshots and seeing blood coming from his ear, I was thinking, did he hit himself off the podium when they took him down? Really didn't have any idea at that point. It was good to see him raise his hand in the air and let us know that he was okay. But I've never been shot, but in the movies, it's sometimes you don't realize that you're shot for a minute later. It's but yeah, it was. I did see that, and as he was walking off the stage, he was walking. The steps were directly at us, so I saw him coming, straight towards us. He stopped, and the Secret Service seemed to be a little I don't not upset, but they're like trying to get him off the stage, and he took a moment, and they're like, "Come on, we've got to go," But yeah, it was one of the scariest moments that I've ever lived through. And it didn't really process. I didn't. I don't think I began processing things until a day and a half later, and you hear of the families that were affected, the people that were injured, the gentleman the father that died. It's very sad and heartbreaking.
I'm sure as a father too, that story resonates with you. The father, the volunteer firefighter, uh, who we were still collecting details as to what exactly happened, where exactly the shots were fired, how did the people in the crowd get hit? And there's so many questions still. I mean, we're speaking on Monday around 10:30 Central Time. So we're not even, let's do the we're not even 48 hours past this event. It's still very new and there's still so many questions. And I'm curious, Gary, what questions you have, because I have questions as a journalist not being at the event that I would like to answer for our audience. But as someone that was there, that experienced it in person, what questions are running through your mind?
Well, first, I have to question why there wasn't more security. Like I said, there were several. All of the security seemed to be up front behind the fence where President Trump was going to be coming in. Didn't really see any security in the crowd. I can't say that means they weren't there. Maybe they were dressed as civilians. I don't know. But so that's one question. Another question that I would have is how a 20-year-old is able to get that close to the president at an event like this and get on a rooftop with a rifle. Um, you know, with all of the technology that we have now, drones, it just seems to me that the area should have been better secured. And, that's probably my biggest question is how this kid gets on a rooftop with a rifle. And, I've heard things, read things since that indicates that, he was seen, people thought that he looked suspicious, um, and other things like it was said that um, people saw him on a rooftop with a gun and that it wasn't handled prior to gunshots being fired. There were thousands of people, children, elderly in this crowd, and to not take immediate action on something like that is very disturbing to me. Um, yeah,
Well,
it's
you make a really important point, which is terrible event. Someone lost their lives. We know that there were 2 other people that were injured as well. We know that the alleged shooter, and I'm saying alleged right now because the FBI, at least in the last, 24 hours, was still describing this person as a person involved in the attempted assassination attempt. So it's like the language has been very interesting and strange as this investigation. I should say strange as someone who's covered these stories for years. I have some questions about how some of it is being um, described and why the language is being used. But as you point out, it could have been so much worse. We're not even thinking about the scenario that there's someone that's an expert shooter that has a different position and is able to do far worse than what we were able to see, which brings up a lot of fears. One of the things we were talking earlier, one of the things you said to me that really struck me is you said, well, part of the reason why you were willing to talk to me, which I'm grateful for, Gary, was that you saw some of the things in the media you didn't like, that there were some things that didn't feel, as someone that was there, as you're kind of dropping in and out of coverage, that you felt wasn't maybe missing the point or wasn't exactly accurate. Talk to our audience about that, because that's a very unique perspective as an eyewitness of this event.
Well, we walked out to the car and we sat there for about 10 minutes. And once the traffic
Oh,
let up a little bit.
Can I pause you there for a second? I'm sorry. When you walked out, did you just walk out of the arena? Did any, I'm just wondering what kind of forensic evidence is around. So were you just able to walk out? Did anyone say anything to you or stop you or hold you there for a while to secure the area? Did any of that happen?
No, and I'm glad that you brought that up, because that's something that I found really odd as well, is that everyone was just allowed to leave. No one said anything. It was, there wasn't any chaos or anything. I mean, we all walked out peacefully, and the feeling that I got was concern, for the people that were injured and for President Trump. But no, everyone was just allowed to leave. Now, when we got in the car, I did turn on KDKA radio, and I was a bit disturbed by what I heard there. And I can't tell you who the gentleman was that was talking, because I don't ever listen to it. I turned it on just to try to get a little bit of news about what happened at the event. But he said with 100% certainty that it wasn't gunshots, that it was some sort of firework or something. And I was just thinking to myself, how can you, I was there, how can you be so certain? Because at that point, I still really didn't know what had happened. We saw the blood, we heard the noise, we saw a couple of people being carried out of the stands. But you couldn't tell whether those people were being taken out because they were suspects or because they were injured. And I was, probably 60 to 70 feet from that area. I couldn't tell, you couldn't see any blood or anything. So, you really just didn't know. But for someone on the radio who had said he wasn't there, to be that certain that it wasn't gunshots, I found extremely odd. I mean, to the point where I turned it off. I couldn't even listen to it. And then we arrived back to our place and turned on the TV, and there was a lot of talk about, presumably this happened, and at this point, we had driven, it was probably over an hour after the event, and I just found it odd that, they didn't have someone there, covering the event, or that could give them better information and let them know that, yeah, this really did happen, but yeah, it's, I really haven't watched a whole lot of news since, but I pretty much everything I've received since then has been on social media or X, Twitter. But yeah, there are a lot of questions. I mean, it's, it just did, for the number of people there, it did not seem like there was enough security there to manage it.
It's an important point that I think you share with us, which is that there was the feeling that you got, and again, just an impression. You didn't know you were walking into an event that was going to be historic, but the impression was, even in the line, oh, there doesn't seem to be enough resources here. there's someone that's fainting. It's taking some time to get medical personnel. There's not a lot of organization when people get in about where they're supposed to sit or where they're not. The crowd is tightly packed. Yeah, there's a security presence, but it's not overwhelming. It was enough for you to notice, oh, that's interesting. There's not a bulletproof, glass. And what is that about? And these are just your thoughts. You again weren't expecting an event to happen. As
Right.
you're Talk to me just about the emotions over the last several hours. You said it's taken you a little while to process it. Your fiance went through a very traumatic event. Her mother was there. Now,
Yeah.
just what
It's
has the last day or so been like?
For me, it's just trying to, there's things that I've read, and true, untrue. That's not for me to say. But I've read that they saw the guy up to 3 minutes prior to the gunshots. I can't say that that's true, but if it is, to not take immediate action when there's that many people, women, children, elderly people in a crowd, seems very irresponsible. And, I can't understand how that could be allowed to happen. There were people injured, and again, I didn't know what happened until we got home. So as far as processing all of this, it's taken some time to, it hit me the hardest yesterday afternoon. We were sitting by a pool just trying to decompress, and we've spent a lot of time in silence in our own thoughts, and my fiance, there's times where I look at her and she's got tears, coming down. She was a little more emotionally affected by it than me. For me, it's heartbreaking that for the families that had people injured or worse. But for me, it's, my processing is, how was this allowed to happen? It seems like it was so preventable with the technology that we have. I mean, I can't fathom that a 20-year-old kid outsmarted our Secret Service.
Mhm.
I just can't understand how it happened.
It sounds like you'd like some answers, and we would too, as we learn more about this event that took place. You described to me that you have friends that come from a lot of different political perspectives, and one of the things that has struck you is some of the conversations that you've had in the aftermath of this. What have those conversations been like? Can you describe some of that for our audience?
A normal conversation with some of these people would be somewhat of a debate. We go back and forth politically, sharing our views, civilly, but we definitely have different views. But I've received phone calls from several of those friends that have expressed nothing but concern, and honestly, they want answers too. They have all the same questions that I have, and we are on completely different ends of the spectrum politically. But it's been interesting for me just because I know how the conversations usually go when it comes to anything political, and it was a political rally. So to get these calls and for it to be solely nothing more than concern for our well-being and being thankful that we made it out of there unscathed. It's definitely, they're my friends, so yes, I would expect that from them. But it's, again, I've never been through anything like this, and I've never had to have these conversations with them. But they obviously were asking me a lot of the same questions that you are. What was
Yeah.
it like being there? Right.
Well, I don't think you have to say it. The last couple of years have definitely produced a lot of interesting conversations amongst friends and families about all sorts of different things across the political spectrum, from the pandemic through, the last several years. Just a final question for you. you came on this interview, you're not wearing a MAGA hat. You don't have a button. It's, it doesn't look like necessarily that. Maybe you do. Gary, do you walk around with like is that your regular fashion? Which we know, because I'm going to ask you a
No,
question about.
I don't.
Okay.
I don't walk around with a mega hat. I don't. I don't wear President Trump T-shirts or negative T-shirts towards the other party. I have my views, and that's the great thing about America is we're all allowed to have our own views, and we have the freedom of speech to talk about these things.
But you said something that I thought was the way that you said it, I think is important. You said, that you love President Trump, that you believed enough in him to actually want to go on a Saturday afternoon in the middle of summer, in the middle of the heat, brave the lines, go into an event, stand there for a couple hours to see him speak, and that it was a really unique experience and you wanted to do that. I'm wondering how you feel about President Trump now. Has that changed the way that you feel about him in any measurable way, or how you're viewing this particular election cycle that we're in?
This man has been attacked from the moment he took office, and it seems that he's a fighter. He is willing to fight for what I feel is the majority of Americans want and would like to see for our country. And to see him stand up after a moment like that and to say the words fight, 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 it was, it amazed me. I mean, I just can't even imagine being shot at and standing up with that type of bravery. And, he's, with all that he's been put through over the last 8 years, I'll be honest, if I were him and I had his resources, I would not be, I would be in the Mediterranean somewhere sitting back and enjoying a cocktail. I would not be putting myself through this. And I think that says a lot about how much he loves our country and what he's willing to do for us. So yes, I do love President Trump. I love what he stands for. Is he a perfect man? No. I mean, during his first term, were there things that annoyed me? The Twitter, the tweets and those things. Wasn't a big fan of those things. But I also know that we were living for 4 years without war. I felt safe. The economy was doing well. I think that we were going in a direction that I hadn't seen in a long time, and I was excited about it. So, I'd love to see him get another 4 years and kind of, see what he can do with the economy. I mean, I mentioned to you, I went to the grocery store yesterday. We might have had 10 items in our bag. It was $100. Fortunately, I have the resources to, but there's a lot of people that can't afford that. So, I feel like something needs to be done to turn things around. And I believe that if anyone can do it, it's him.
Even if you have the resources, when you look at your bag, you're thinking about what the cost is. It's something that's very visceral. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because it is a real issue for this campaign season overall for both candidates. Just quickly, and I don't mean to turn you into a political analyst, but I am curious about how you feel about this. There's been talk in the hours after this has happened about political rhetoric, and that it's been too heated on both sides. And in this conversation that you can watch on the news, and certainly I'm a big consumer of news for what I do, there's been kind of this pushback on President Trump of, well, his tone is just as bad as everybody else's, and everybody needs to elevate at this time. Now, we don't know if political rhetoric is what actually inspired this person. We actually have no idea what his motive is. But would you like to see a change even from President Trump and the Republicans after this in any measurable way? A
I
tone
would.
change, a shift? Yes. Talk to us about
I
that,
would.
because is this a time for self-reflection?
I think that is very important, that things change. I don't care for all of the rhetoric that goes back and forth between candidates. I mean, you did this, just the blaming back and forth. I'd be more concerned with what you're going to do. I'd like to hear what your plan is to fix things. As from what I've watched over the past several years, you're looking at a man that has been attacked from all angles. I look at that and I ask myself how I would handle that, and it would be hard not to fight back, and I think we've all seen that President Trump is a fighter. But would I like to see him change his tone? Both sides, because, as much as I hear about, in a situation like this, I'm hearing a lot about, this is a time for us to all come together. Every day should be that way. I'd love to see the conflict between parties, and, I'd love to see, there's so many families out there that have been destroyed over politics, and I just, I wish that we could all have civil conversations about it without letting it end relationships. I've lost friends over it, that we have different opinions. That's the great thing about America. We're allowed to have these different opinions, and we're allowed to talk about them. But I think it's very unfortunate that that we have the leaders of our country at times acting like children. Really, I mean, it would be nice if they could just talk civilly and work through things together, both sides. And I don't see any of that going on. So yes, I would. I'd love to see change there.
Well, we'll see if it actually is a moment for a reset. I'm just curious, any of your friends, you think the ones that don't support President Trump, do you have any sense that their votes are changing, or that they're not as you're in a really important state, Gary. Pennsylvania could be the key for the election. So what's the vibe? And clearly you're a reflection of Pennsylvania because it's very close, but both sides are very strong in Pennsylvania, which is why it's a swing state.
Right.
So any sense, do you think anyone's coming to the dark side with you, Gary? Do you think, are they not inspired to vote? Like, what do you think? Too early to tell? What do you
I think it might be too early to tell, but I will say, as we talked about earlier, the phone calls that I've received from friends that have different political views, the vibe that I received, whether it's going to change their vote, I hope so. But I think it's too soon to tell. I haven't really, we've kind of kept to ourselves ever since the event. We really haven't had too much interaction with people. It's just mostly been friends and family calling to say that we're glad that you made it out of there okay, and things like that. But I think it's too soon to tell.
Okay. Well, I'll leave that. We'll leave the political analysis for another time. In the meantime, a cocktail in the Mediterranean sounds great. So count me in on that, Gary, when this whole thing is over. I'm like, one day we'll have a moment where there's not breaking news or something catastrophic, but we've been in quite an interesting news cycle. I feel like I can't say the words historic and unprecedented anymore. It's too cliche. So I appreciate your perspective. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us and give us a different point of view on this very legitimately historic event, and being so open to share your thoughts. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for believing in quick, concise, nonpartisan, smarter news. Every time you join us or share or save our content, you help us build a solution in news, and we are so grateful. We have a few other ways you can support our mission, from joining our insider community Scoop, to shopping our gear at our Smarter shop, to just telling a friend. The best way to do any of this is to visit smarternews.com or follow us at Smarter News on social media. Don't worry, we put all of this in the captions so it's easy for you. Plus, we added our email just in case you want to drop us a note. We always love hearing from you. Thank you for helping us deliver news smarter.